Welcome to the Mission Manhood podcast, where mature masculinity is celebrated and encouraged. My name is Angela Abide, and I will be your host. Every week or so, I sit down with a man who is in the men's movement, helping men grow and thrive in their masculinity, someone who is exhibiting characteristics of mature masculinity, or someone who has a perspective that might be beneficial for those who are seeking to grow and develop in that area. As a woman, I have a unique perspective as a mother and a therapist, and I hope to contribute to the conversation in those ways. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Hey, I'm glad you're here. My guest on this podcast episode is GS Youngblood. He wrote The Masculine in Relationship, and if you've been listening for a while, you might remember that he was on before. Today we're talking about his new book, The Art of Embodiment. And in this book, he focuses, it's written for men, and it's kind of an extension of the book, The Masculine in Relationship. So some of the concepts there are fleshed out a little bit more, like how to overcome the tyranny of your mind, how to get embodied, how to listen to your heart, how to hold the space for someone else who is emotionally dysregulated or who needs to be heard or witnessed or observed. And so it's a great how-to book. And really, I will say I have to agree with GS that this kind of work is really transformative for people who are seeking change. And it's not a quick and easy solution. It's not just a formula. It's a practice that takes a lot of work and sacrifice. But I can tell you from my own personal experience and from what I have observed with some of my clients, it's definitely worth it. And having that peace and feeling that regulation and being able to observe the mind instead of being tossed about by your mind is such a relief. Hi, GS.
Hello, Angela. Thank you for having me on today.
Thanks so much for being here. For my listeners, they'll remember that about a year ago, we talked about your book, The Masculine in Relationship. And so I'm happy to have you back to talk about your new book, The Art of Embodiment for Men.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I love talking about it. So I'm glad we're doing this.
I don't know if I've told you this, but that episode is the most listens of any episode that I have. So it's a very popular episode.
I love hearing that.
I think that one is such an important work. And then this one, it's just a different step. In the first book, men can kind of get a vision of what it might be like to be a strong masculine in relationship. And I think this book really gives men tools to experience that embodiment.
Mm-hmm. I talked so much in the first book about embodiment, but also just a lot of the interviews that I did as being the number one thing that a man can do to build his masculine core. And so that was what gave birth to this book. I knew it was a more specialized book, so I suspected it wouldn't sell quite as widely as the first one has, because it's so specialized. But that's the thing; it needs that amount of depth, and I really had to create a book that had all of my learnings over the years that I've been doing this, and brought it into one place for guys that did want to really commit and really go deep. And I work with a lot of guys, and only a subset are really willing to go all in. But those are the ones that make the progress. Those are the ones that see their lives changing because they've gone all in on creating a daily embodiment practice. And again, that was what gave rise to me writing this book.
The back cover of the book, it says that a daily embodiment practice will change your life. And it's the number one thing that men can do to build their masculine core. Like, that's kind of a bold statement, but I think it's so true. And when I'm working with people in general, and especially men, I tell them that, you have to be able to learn to manage your mind and emotions. And I think this book really helps men understand what that even means. And I think you did a great job with that.
Yeah, let's even take that phrase, learning to manage your mind and emotions. The way that I would talk about that is what we're doing is we're giving you more capacity to handle the intensity of relationship or interpersonal dynamics. And because you have more capacity to handle that intensity, you can be with your strong emotions, you can know your strong emotions, and then from that place, you can make choice about how you want to be. The opposite of that is what most men experience on a daily basis is they don't have the capacity for the intensity, so they get blown out. They don't have the capacity to know their own emotions, and so those emotions run them in the background rather than them living life out of choice. And that's where we get our dysfunctional behaviors, us men, where we get defensive, we get stony, and otherwise don't engage in this relational process and stay present for, the inevitable flare-ups of emotion on either side. And when I think of a man managing his emotions, it starts with capacity, which leads to choice about
Mhm.
how he wants to be.
Yeah. You start the book off identifying a problem, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that. Like, what is the problem you were specifically addressing with
Mhm.
men and their emotions?
In the work that I'm doing with men, we're trying to build their masculine core, which was having them occur as more grounded in the moment, having them occur as embodying a certain sense of stillness, and also being very, very present. And that's the problem with a lot of guys. They're kind of at the mercy of their thoughts. They're at the mercy of their
Mhm.
actions, and so they're being very reactive in the world. So any stimuli that comes along, they're very reactive, and you can see guys like this. They either go into the pleaser mentality or they stonewall, or
Yeah.
in maybe if they're being blamed for something, they get very defensive. And I mean, this as a woman, like none of that
Yeah.
feels good. None of that builds connection. None of that feels very sexy or attractive, quite frankly. It occurs as weakness in the man when he's so reactive to the world's stimuli. And so that's the problem. That's the precursor to the problem. The outcome of that situation is that his woman doesn't feel the connection between the two of them. His woman doesn't feel his solidity. And that's where things start to drift a little bit into a space that doesn't feel very good for the guy, where she's less adoring, less open, more critical, more irritable, and less open to sexuality in a situation like that. And so, if you go to any man and say, look, I'm going to give you a way to be more grounded in the world, to feel more present, to be less reactive and defensive. Do you want to do it? And 99 out of 100 guys are going to say, heck yeah. Well, that's what we have here. That's what embodiment does. It brings you into the present moment. It takes you out of the stories of and compensations of the mind to difficult situations
Yeah.
and creates that sense of stillness within you that others can feel. Others can
Mhm.
trust you more because of that level of groundedness they feel in your body. This is really the core of any man who's building his own masculine core, which is why I'm so high on men having a daily embodiment practice.
And I love that you wrote about the promise of embodiment. And the term that you used is that embodiment will free you from the tyranny of your mind, and it
Yeah.
will give you, access to your emotions, cause you to be less reactive, more present, and more authoritative, which
Hmm.
is really meaningful in family life, in the boardroom, in the bedroom, in life in general. You had a quote here that said that when you can be present, it gives her the emotional oxygen she so desperately needs in the moment to be seen, heard, understood, and felt. I love that term, emotional oxygen, because I get exactly what you're talking about there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I contend that what the feminine wants most of all in relationship is to be felt by her man. Like she wants to feel him feeling her emotional state in the moment. And so when she's upset, she first doesn't want you to deny her feelings or invalidate them. And then if you can get beyond that, she's hoping you understand them mentally. But what she's really hoping for is you can just pause for a moment and feel her pain in that moment. And that's really the emotional oxygen that I'm talking about. And for a guy to be able to do that, well, number one, it's one of the most powerful things he can do to create a pretty juicy and sexy relationship. But all he has to do is have the space not to go into his own threat state. When her emotions come, red alert. So through the practice of embodiment, you can actually
Hmm.
settle that kind of reactivity which leaves you more present to just to be with what's actually happening in the moment inside
Yeah.
her emotional body. And that's one of the most powerful things that a man can do to create the kind of adoration and devotion in a partner that deep down he's really craving.
I had to laugh at one point because, I hear men telling other men what women want all the time. And it's usually some mystical, always involves deep penetration. And, a lot of times it feels like I just want a cheeseburger, some ice cream, and I want you to take the time to stop and understand. And that is worth all the gold. So it's a real gift to develop this so that you can. And I mean, every woman is different. Obviously, not everybody wants a cheeseburger, but sometimes it's so hard to get the feelings into the brain and then out of the mouth in a way that could be understood.
Yeah.
And a man's mind is going so fast that if he can't stop and regulate, back up and give her a little space to express herself, I think a lot is lost there. And then she feels empty, she feels disconnected, and eventually maybe just gives in and goes along with the program. But I love that language that you're using, because it is true. Women just
Yeah.
need to, for you to understand their feeling.
Yeah.
Let's tell about the magic moment.
What the way you're describing it, a woman just wants to be felt. I think some guys could look at that and be like, "Oh my God, what do you want me to get all emotional and write her poetry?" Like they get very sort of dismissive and cynical. And I say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! We didn't say you had to go and be super emotional. We said you
Yeah.
needed to sit there, be powerful, and make some space for her emotion. So this is not some." It's kind of like some Harlequin novel, romance novel that you've got to be this weird dude. No, you have to be a powerful dude that just can make some space for your woman and her emotional state and feel it, understand it. And it's really not much more complicated than that. So I want to caution guys against bastardizing what we're talking about here just because it seems different or unfamiliar or you don't know how to do it. This is about truly being in your power. And that leads you to the magic moment. Magic moment is something I write about, which is it's that moment where her emotions flare and you start to hear the alarm bells going off because your nervous system gets triggered by being blamed or anything like that. Usually by being blamed, or at least you think you're being blamed. The magic moment is that moment you can go down the left side, which is reactivity, either withdrawing or going stony, blaming back or getting defensive and trying to explain to her why she shouldn't feel that way. That's one path. And the other is to ground yourself, become very present, be very brave, quite frankly. It's emotional bravery in that moment. Be present and engage with her, even in the face of what may seem a little scary. And does require that not only the emotional bravery, but also the cultivated capacity that we're talking about here through the practice of embodiment. I can tell you how it's going to go if you go down this way. I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. You guys are going to be talking two different languages because she's emotional and you're explaining or withdrawing, and there's going to be it's going to get worse and pretty much go down the drain pipe. This path, if you do it the even reasonably right way, she's going to start to quickly feel seen and felt by you and met at that in that emotional space. And then her nervous system is going to come down. She's going to take a breath. And then after some short amount of processing time, she'll probably be like, I'm sorry I got so fired up. And you're going to come back into connection. And then in 5 minutes later, you're going to be happy with each other. You'll be cuddling. Later that night, you two might choose to get sexual. And none of that's happening over on this other path. I guarantee you that.
Yeah.
That's a 3-day fight. So that magic moment is a big one where you can go into the 3-day fight or you can go back into reconnection with all the ease and adoration on her part that you're craving from her. I mean, that's pretty universal for guys. We want to be adored by our woman. We want her to be devoted. We want her to be open to us and forgiving for our little quirks. And you get all of that when you go down this path and create some emotional resonance by just being able to be present with what's real for her. So that's
Yeah.
the magic moment, Angela.
This is going to sound terrible. I don't know of another way to say it, but I just want to be as bad as I want to be and be in the presence of a man that can handle that. And there's I'm a nice person. I'm a nice lady. I would never really try to hurt anybody. So I'm not talking about being mean or abusive, but to be irritated or annoyed and not always thinking that I'm going to hurt somebody's feelings, or just to be able to have someone respond with humor or laughter or just that grounded presence. Come here, give me a hug. And you talk about the era of the nice guys and the alpha dogs. It's kind of that era of me versus we. Instead of the guy thinking about the relationship, he's thinking about himself.
Yeah, this is something I actually talk about in the first book. I need to set some context here. So, in the first book, I go over the masculine blueprint. And you remember this
Mm-hmm.
from our last
Yeah,
conversation. So,
I do.
element one, respond versus react. Element two, provide structure. And element three, create safety. And I think those speak for themselves, so I won't go back into explaining those. Here's the problem there's lots of archetypes of guys out there. I've known some guys who were manly, but they're really tight. They just seem like they're always clenched up. And the way I describe that is they're over identifying with respond versus react. Like they're so like tight and controlled that they're never going to overreact to anything because they're so controlled. And it's like you can't even breathe around a person like that.
Yeah.
And while they might seem like a masculine dude in a certain respect, they're over identifying with respond versus react to the point where some of the other elements suffer. The alpha dog over identifies with provide structure because they're like, I'm the alpha, we're doing it my way,
Mm-hmm.
everybody fall in line. And they're setting so much direction and structure that everybody else, there's no free will allowed by anybody else. And that's the problem. That doesn't actually feel very good. At first, it feels good to the feminine because the dude is directed. But at some point, they're like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, is there any space for me in this relationship? And it starts to get old after a while. And even while like if you just even look at other men too, like they might fall in line behind the alpha, but secretly they're like, F you, man. But they're too
Yeah.
scared to say it because the guy's so dominating. So again, the
Mm-hmm.
alpha over identifies with provide structure. And then the nice guy over identifies with create safety. Like he's going to be
Mm-hmm.
so nice and unassuming that everyone feels safe, and he's checking everyone out to make sure everybody feels okay and safe. And he never upsets anybody. So again, he over identifies
Yeah.
with create safety. The true masculine that I write about, this is my offering to the world and my lens on things. It takes all three. If you really want to be that holistic whole man that I think the feminine really trusts, enjoys, and will follow.
A lot of times, if you're coming from your mind, you sort of want a formula, you want a way to do it. And a lot of people that I see trying to lead in this space have developed a formula and they're trying to teach people the formula. The thing I love about your teaching is it comes more from a father energy, and you're encouraging guys to kind of grow up in a way. Like you can't just be that. Sometimes the moment calls for that. Sometimes it calls for this. You have to learn that flow and that dance. And I think that's what really comes across in this book. The way you get there is through this practice of embodiment. And it's not cheap and it's not easy. It's not learning a formula. It's not checking boxes. And I think you say that it's going to be a deep learning experience, but to change your life, you're going to really need to dive into it. And you use the word practice a lot. And I know we talk about a meditation practice, but that really struck me that so many guys are willing to go out and spend an hour or two at the gym on a very regular basis to build their exterior body. But this inner work of learning to manage your mind and emotions seems to make them weak somehow. Getting in touch with emotions. I think we just have a distorted view of that
Yeah.
because in reality, that's going to be the thing that makes you very powerful.
Really is. And a lot of guys, I think we touched on this earlier, but a lot of guys sort of dismiss like anything with the word emotion attached to it. They're like, oh my God. And
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of stuff in the men's space. I see other people who are talking about stuff and your job is not to go into the emotions. That's her job. And that teaching lacks depth, I think. And this notion of relating, it is a dance. Sometimes you're leading and sometimes you're yielding. Sometimes you're bringing directionality and sometimes you're bringing heart. And I think that's
Mhm.
where a lot of people miss. And yeah, being agile and powerful with your emotions is one of the most powerful things that you can do as a man. And what that means is you don't lose yourself in your emotionality. The feminine, like if you look at pure feminine energy, that's more identified with unconstrained emotionality. It's going to be more that unconstrained, a little more chaotic. It's a very different form of emotionality for the masculine. The masculine
Mhm.
feels deeply, and the powerful part of that is if you can't feel your own emotions deeply, they're running you in the background anyway. And then you're just
Yeah.
playing out a script. That's weak in my opinion. What's powerful is to know my emotions, to sometimes suffer in silence. That's some part of the masculine burden, is to sometimes suffer in silence. But also, and hopefully more, it's to be able to express yourself in a powerful way. And usually how I coach men to do that is to just boil it down into 2 or 3 sentences. When
Mhm.
you did this, when you said, I don't make a lot of money, I actually felt hurt by you, baby. And my story was that you were kind of looking down on me, and it didn't feel good. And I just
Yeah.
noticed, the way that I retracted from you for the rest of the night. Like, that's a powerful way. You don't need her to do anything so that you can feel better. You don't need mommy to make you feel better, but you can express like, hey, that didn't feel good. I
Mhm.
teach a very powerful way for men to express themselves and to speak from a very deep place, not just a heady place, but a very deep place. When men do this, women are just like, wow, a man that can actually express himself
Mhm.
in a powerful way. It's very, very attractive. I'll say that unequivocally.
I can testify to that. It is attractive. And from the woman's point of view, what you're describing is when you're overly reactive. I think the energy for a woman is she's either going to expand and feel like she has to manage. So if the man is kind of shrinking down into more of an adolescent and being very reactive and chaotic, she's going to feel like she has to rise up. And then if he's being too large and she's shrinking down, there's just not enough room, like you said, with that alpha who's so certain about everything. There's no room for her. I think what you just described when you said, hey, that stung me. You're not being emotional about it. You're being factual. You're kind of naming for her what her attitude or words or actions did for you,
Hmm.
and you're calling her back. I think you talked about this in the first book, calling her back to her heart, asking her to join you. Like, this is not the vision I have for this relationship. This is not
Hmm.
how we treat each other. And to your point, I mean, it's a very strong stance to take. It's leadership, and you're kind of the keeper of the vision for your relationship. Unlike what people think, you're going to have to get all soft and mushy. It's actually a very strong stance to take, and it is super attractive.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up the notion of being in your heart. Like, being in your heart is a very powerful thing.
Mhm.
It is powerful because it really brings your woman into a space where she can feel safe, and that's what we want to do for our women. We want them to feel safe, and we can invite them back into their heart and us be in our powerful heart. And it's one of the things I teach men all the time.
And you mentioned that in your book, that being in your heart is possibly the root of a lot of relational dysfunction when she can't feel you.
Yeah, it's like even setting a boundary, which a lot of nice guys can't even set a boundary, but let's assume you can. There's a way to set a boundary like, you can't talk to me like that. And it's kind of harsh.
Yeah.
Well, you can do that. I mean, I guess if you look at it from the lens of your civil rights, you can set boundaries like that, but it's not real. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily relational. It doesn't open your woman. She'll probably acquiesce, but inside she'll be a little more closed to you. But you can come from a heartful place where you drop into your heart and be like, baby, that's not actually okay. And that's not how we're
Mm.
going to be with each other. And I want you to join me and come back into your heart and tell me where you're hurting, or tell me where I've hurt you. You're a little softer, but you're very directed. You're very clear. There's a
Mhm.
lot of clarity in what you're bringing, but you bring it with heart. That's the most powerful combination that I've found, that is both powerful and relational. And over, this is what I'm trying to teach guys. How can you be powerful and relational, not one at the expense of the other?
I think that's super powerful. And you talked a little bit about what gets in the way of that sometimes is the wound that the man has. And so he's maybe judging things based on the abandonment wound or some trauma. And so the beauty of learning to be in touch, to be embodied, you have lots and lots of tools that obviously we don't have time to go into, but I'm just going to describe like an example of being able to keep your attention on your own reaction and the sensations that you're feeling in your body, and also keep your attention on what's happening outside of you. You can manage both of those. And so instead of being sucked into your own trauma or emotions or whatever, you can kind of straddle that. So you're keeping yourself safe and you're also responding instead of reacting on the outside.
Yeah, that's the core of my teachings is this concept of split attention, is what I call it, where through your embodiment practice, you learn to direct a certain amount of your awareness into some physical sensation in your body. And I talk lots about which ones that we focus on in the book. And put the rest of your attention externally into the relational field with other, whoever other is. And what that does is, because you're tethered to a sensation, a physical sensation. Well, physical sensation only happens in the now, in this moment. Okay, you don't experience physical sensation as a future or past thing. You have memories of it, but you don't experience it. You don't actually feel it. If you put some attention on the sensation, you're tethered into this moment more. Okay, so you're
Yeah.
less likely to get lost in these thoughts of past and future, which is what we all do. We go into our thinking mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're more in the present moment, we're actually able to see, like, the things that we thought were threatening aren't quite as threatening when we're actually just here in this moment. Like, yeah, our woman's jacked up and upset, but it's not like
Yeah.
she's swinging a knife around at me or anything where there's real threat. Like, she's just,
Hopefully.
but the problem is we're so tuned toward being in our thinking minds. I mean, think about it. You're in your mind all day long, looking at your phone, looking at your laptop, processing emails, videos, blogs, messages, just endless. And so anything you do all day long is going to get stronger. So the thinking mind is very strong, and it generates these thoughts, which are either coping mechanisms or kind of ways that we make sense of other people's behavior, and we make stories and projections. That all happens in the mind, particularly when there's emotional friction going on in the moment. And so we start to believe those stories, those projections, those memories of what's
Mm-hmm.
happening as reality. And then we react to those, but those stories are usually much bigger than what's actually happening in the moment. When we're not tethered into the body, not tethered into sensation or the moment, we react to this false reality of our thoughts and projections and stories. But when we anchor into the body, we're more in the now, we're more responding to what's actually happening. And that, we all know that that's way more healthy. To respond to what's actually happening is better than just flying off the handle, overreacting to the stories in our mind about the other person's behavior. The core of what we're trying to do here.
We talked about the magic moment and developing the ability to choose how you're going to be in any interaction, and how that could be good across the board and for your relationship. But you had a beautiful story in the book about you took your son to the airport, and because of all of this training, and that's such a stressful time when you're taking somebody to the airport and you pull up and the traffic cop's going to be like, move along, move along, move along. But you knew, based on your ability to be in your body and understand, you were able to get out of your mind and get out of the flurry
Yeah.
and realize that this is a moment. This is a core memory for my kids, and I'm going to take a little time with this and not just rush, 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 and give the long embrace and actually be in that moment. This practice is hard and it's difficult and it takes sacrifice and a lot of time, but it gives back so much. And for your kids to be in the presence of a man who understands and allows the important things.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was an emotional moment for me, and I was happy I was able to really be present for these little markers in life that are so important that we could easily blow past.
Throughout the book, you tell of all the different ways you cultivate this like a gardener. You're really working at it. Something like that moment is the fruit. That's where it really pays off.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, I've been on my own long journey, just like we all have, and yeah, I lived a lot of my early life in my stories, and which blocked reality, my avoidances, which blocked reality, and yeah, I do feel more alive, and sometimes it doesn't feel very good. It's not always happy, happy,
Yeah.
joy, joy, but I feel more alive and I feel more present. I feel like I'm experiencing the depth of life in a way that I never had as a as a young man. And I want that for everybody.
Life is just suffering and a lot of sacrifice. And what we get from the world is a lot of symbolism over real substance. And that's why this book's more of an investment. It's long term that's going to pay off for you. And I think those rewards will really, really pay off in the life of you personally. That peace that you get, getting out of the tyranny of your mind in your relationships, and then, just being able to operate in the world at a lower level and not be so frantic and stressed out all the time.
Yeah, yeah. It through the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an exercise. I don't talk about it in the book, but I do talk about it in my embodiment video course, which is kind of a companion to the book about a cold shower protocol. And in men's work, doing cold plunges is kind of a thing these days. It's very
Yeah.
popular.
Yeah. I've heard about that.
And so I have a cold shower protocol, and it sucks to stand there in the cold water. I mean, there's no getting around it. It just doesn't feel very good. But you learn to develop the capacity to be with the intensity and the discomfort. And that is a great teacher for sitting with the pain of life. Part of real depth is to be able to be with the heartache as well as with the joys, and to
Mm-hmm.
be present and to be fully permeable to the hard stuff. I really believe that. I really believe that. That's part of true depth in either a man or a woman. And
Mm-hmm.
so I write about that in the video course that I talked about. That's part of what this is about. That's why part of the protocols for me and the embodiment I teach is like cold showers or cold
Mm-hmm.
plunges, because it creates your ability to sit in the parts that suck in
Yeah.
life. And that maps over into also being with the pain of the hard things. Somebody dies, you have a failure in life, somebody leaves you, whatever it is. Your ability to stay present for those moments is also depth. And that's
Mm-hmm.
part of what I'm teaching.
Yeah, that masculine presence is such a gift in so many areas of life. And I think you just mentioned the hard time, a funeral, just to offer your presence. You've trained for this. You understand what it means to stand, and people can count on that and look to you for leadership in those difficult times if you've cultivated something like this.
Yeah.
I think it's a
Yeah.
beautiful gift not only to yourself and your family, but also to the world.
Agreed. Yeah. It is a beautiful gift to give your presence and your steadiness to the world and to those in your world as well.
At the end of the book, it says that there's some free downloads that come with the price of the book, but you also offer for people who just want to go deeper with it or learn more, you have some additional tools that you teach. Tell me a little bit about how that program works.
Yeah, this is the video course that I mentioned a few minutes ago. Yeah, it takes you a step beyond just the book. And there's certain things that you kind of need to see, and you need to have it explained in a different way. And that's what I do. There's also some
Mhm.
things that aren't included in the book that are in the course as well. So, I highly recommend everybody get the course and really dive into the depth of the material. It's about the nuance. It's about the context that you put around
Mhm.
it rather than sometimes the mechanics of the exercise itself. And I think in a video format, I'm better able to convey some of those nuances than I can in
Gotcha.
the book by itself. So you can find that on my website, gsyoungblood.com.
Because a lot of the work that I do is about that dance, the masculine feminine dance. I'm intrigued with that side of it, and you wrote something I wanted to share with everyone. The way your mind tries to over-evaluate the hidden meaning in everything your partner says in heated moments, the way you become attached to a certain outcome rather than stay open to the unfolding, the way you can't just sit in the unknown of things, the way that your subconscious tries to make intensity and anxiety stop rather than just being with them. When you get defensive and try to make her stop being mad by explaining the facts to her, instead of letting her emotions arise and fall in the moment, you're trying to convince her not to feel that way because you can't tolerate it and you want it to stop. When your mind is doing all of these things, you will occur as more rigid and reactive and less grounded and powerful. And you know the impact that will have on your woman. She won't feel safe and she won't feel trusting. I think every person alive has felt those feelings of just wanting it to go away, of wanting to bolt, of wanting to shut it down. with that firefighter part that just brings in all the emotion and intensity. But
Mhm.
that's just a contrast to kind of what we've been talking about of being that embodied man that can handle all of those emotions and creating that safety for the feminine.
Yeah, I don't know how to respond to that. I just agree.
That's what you wrote. I mean, it's just a beautiful encapsulation of that. And one of the reasons I wanted to read that is just as a feminine witness. I think it's important to highlight that as maybe a why somebody would want to dive deeper into this and perhaps take the course and do the work.
Yeah, thank you. It's like, oh, I wish reality wasn't like it was actually right happening in this moment. And there's this we want to get to a different place or a different state. And this work allows you the capacity to just be with what is. And that creates so much freedom, and so much is possible when you can just be with the moment, but it requires training.
Yeah, definitely. You said, don't be the caveman who is oblivious to emotions or the alpha who doesn't think he needs to care about emotions. You said, I'd much rather be the magician that sidesteps that shit show.
I was explaining what magician meant the other day. It's like you know the dynamics and you can shape the dynamics in a relationship so well, not manipulate, but shape, because you know these dynamics. You can ride the wave of how the feminine will react to the masculine. And you can, the inputs that you can put in are subtle and powerful, but can really shape the dynamic towards more connection rather than dissolution. It seems
Yeah.
like magic.
I do think it's magic because I've experienced that myself. Just feeling that emotion rising like a storm, like a tempest, and then to have someone who's so grounded in their own body, just peace, be still.
Yeah.
And you know it's safe. You know you're going to be able to express what you need to express. You don't have to put on this big show and be dramatic. It is magic. And I tell men all the time, you're very powerful. We live in a society that people are confused and they don't know how to be. And sometimes they're even afraid of their masculine strength and energy, but it is a gift and it has to be cultivated. And, women are really longing for that. I
Yeah.
appreciate this book and your teaching and the learning that you did so that you could teach it.
It was a long road of learning for me the hard way. I will say that. But thank you for having me on and talking to me about it with me. I love discussing these topics.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And before we get away, can you just remind people again of like your website and how they might be able to find you on
Yeah.
social media?
Yeah, but best ways to engage with me. So the website gsyoungblood.com. You'll see links to the books. Or you can find the books on Amazon, both the masculine in relationship and the Art of Embodiment for Men. On the website are also my video courses. I think we talked about one of them,
Yeah,
so you can find them there. Most importantly, on the website is you can also get onto the mailing list. So I think that's something that you should do, because then you'll get notified of new things that come out. For instance, I have a workshop coming up on dark sexual energy and men responsibly and consensually bringing a little bit more edge into the bedroom. It's been requested for a long time from my
yeah.
readers and viewers and client base, and so I'm finally able to put that out. And then if you want just a taste of my work beyond this podcast, then just go to Instagram, GS Youngblood MIR, and you'll see lots of videos and things about me.
Okay, so I'm curious, the requests for the dark sexual energy, were those from the wives or from the husbands, or was it a mixture of both?
Both. Yeah. I have at least 3 clients. They told their wives, and the wives were just simply, "You're going." I
Yeah.
thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, it's the there's so many of my clients, and I think it's representative of a large portion of men out there whose female partner wants more edge, wants more variety, wants
Hmm.
to be led a little bit more in the bedroom. And that's not everybody, but I think that's a big majority of people that would crave a little bit of that. But the question is that we're not talking about 50 Shades of Gray here. They don't want him to be
Right.
Christian Grey. How do you bring more edge in that is consensual, responsible, governed by the heart, but still a
Hmm.
little edgy? And that's the art of what I'm going
Yeah.
to be teaching in this workshop.
And if someone's listening and this is your first exposure, in your other book, The Masculine in Relationship, you go into that a little bit, talking about lead her to her pleasure. And I think
Yeah.
that's what women are desiring, to be led even there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, things can get a lot more fun when you become an artist of these dynamics.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's great talking to you again.
Yeah, likewise, Angela. That was a lot of fun, and thank you for having me on.